Podcasting from Singapore and broadcasting all around the world. You're listening to the EdTech Chat Podcast, taking the pulse of educators from all over the globe and bringing what you need every week. Now, over to your host, Craig Kemp.
Hello and welcome to episode 27 of the EdTech Chat Podcast. I'm your host, Craig Kemp, and I'm thrilled to have your support. I continue to work with the incredibly talented Mark Quinn to improve the final audio quality of this podcast. He has his own podcast production studio that provides editing and mastering services to content creators. To connect with Mark, please see the details in the podcast notes below. As I've mentioned before, I've grown my Ignite EdTech consultancy team to include some of the best EdTech leaders from all over the globe. Each week, I want to take a few minutes to introduce a new member of our team that you may like to chat to about supporting you in your school or company. Today, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Jennifer Williams. Let's have a listen to our brief chat. Thank you for joining me today, Jen. As a valued member of the Ignite EdTech consulting team, you work with schools all over the world to help them thrive in many different ways. Tell us a little bit about your current role, your experience, and your areas of expertise.
Well, thanks, Craig. I always love when we get a chance to talk. So, it's just such an exciting time right now, as you and I often talk about in education. And I have this great pleasure of working to support across education stakeholders. So I am working with students and teachers in my role as director of Take Action Global, our nonprofit organization, which is all around student activism and use of EdTech for good. I get to work with our pre-service teachers and currently practicing teachers in my role as professor in the College of Education and Grad Ed. And I get to have a lot of fun as a consultant working with EdTech companies and different districts and schools all around the world.
Amazing. And, I get to follow a lot of what you do online, and when we have the opportunity to chat as well, there's so many things that you're passionate about. But what are you most passionate about in education right now?
I think for me, it comes down to strong instructional design, and I'm really interested in finding accessible solutions for all. So how can we connect teachers and leaders and students to have access to all of these great ideas and information and opportunities that are happening right now in education in our world?
Tell us a little bit about a time when you helped others succeed and thrive.
Well, I think that what I found when I kind of moved into this world of EdTech was that companies were working in isolation, but creating for teachers, and teachers felt like companies didn't really want to hear from them. So I right away set out and said, we've got to fix that. So I love finding ways that we can bridge EdTech companies to classroom teachers and really start to create that dialogue and interaction.
And Jen, how do you help schools as a consultant, and how would schools and EdTech companies benefit from working with you?
So I love finding sustainable solutions. So not just one-offs, but really ways that schools can continue with the work over periods of time. So if that's working with instructional design or finding innovations with technology and collaborative practices. So just really meeting them where they're at, building them up, and trying to find solutions for impact for their communities.
For more information about Jen and the rest of the Ignite EdTech consulting team and how to inquire, visit igniteedtech.com/our-team. The link is in the description below. Jen, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Craig.
Thank you for your questions that you continue to send in. This week, I wanted to discuss one question from Syria. She asked, what are the best ways to use technology in an early childhood setting? Thank you for your question, Syria. With 2 children of my own who have gone through an excellent early childhood system here in Singapore, I have a lot of experience with what works and what doesn't work. Also, as a consultant, I've worked with many schools in their early childhood through grade 12 strategy for implementation of technology to add value to learning at all ages. As an EdTech director in a school, one of the most asked questions from parents was about screen time. After doing a lot of research, the best and most recent piece of research for me comes from the American Academy of Pediatrics. It shows that the most important part of screen usage is quality over quantity. It shows that it doesn't matter how much your children are on a screen, what matters is the quality of what they're doing. The study also pointed out that the only group where technology use is not recommended is under the age of 2, for reasons of vision and hearing development. For children aged 2 to 5, it's recommended to keep screen time usage to 1 hour or less, and then for children aged 6 and above, there's no data to support the negative use of screen time. The study suggests that parents know their kids best, so screen time should be assigned on a case-by-case basis, managed by the adults. For me, it's always about the why. Can you justify your tech use? If you can't, then don't use it. And this applies to all ages, including adults. Specifically now, let's talk about early childhood learning and technology use. Syria, when it comes to EdTech use in early childhood, I have some great case studies that I'm happy to share more of, so feel free to contact me directly about that. What we did well, and something that I feel is critical to the success of any program, is speaking to all stakeholders to find out what works and what doesn't work. At my last school, this included testing and trialing new technologies with all learners, including early learners. Technology doesn't need to be a screen, and something we decided to do at my last school was to create innovation kits for every class in our early learning village for learners aged 2 to 5. In addition to access to iPads with early learning specific apps included, our innovation kits included robots like B-bots to help with counting and directional language, light-up boxes, soundboards, and other tools for sensory development, and anything that promoted speaking, listening, collaboration, and communication, critical skill development areas for early childhood learning. One of my biggest recommendations is to match the curriculum and learning experiences to the tools. Explore and use tools and see how kids use them. If they're positive, then they always have a place in my classroom. As a parent and experienced educator, I highly recommend you steer clear of screens when it comes to technology. Let kids explore other forms of technology at this age and promote the importance of inquiry-based learning. If you're an early childhood educator, please do share the tools you use for your young learners. I look forward to hearing from you soon. A tool that has positively impacted the authentic and purposeful use of technology into classrooms and meeting rooms that I have worked in is Boomwriter. Boomwriter is a collaborative writing tool that offers a unique way to unleash students' creativity by building on the work of others. Last week, we talked to Sean Fordy. He talked about Boomwriter and its use at his school. Go back and have a listen. Boomwriter offers a few resources to get started. Teachers can take advantage of the pre-made lesson plans. There are ideas on how to turn Boomwriter into an entire teaching unit. For example, teachers can introduce various writing techniques and encourage students to use them in their own writing. Or teachers can use vocabulary lists from any subject to give students a chance to use newly learned words. Writing can happen individually or in small groups. Students can create books as a whole class, or teachers can break the class into two and have students compare the path each group took to develop the same story start. This could even happen between classes. The tool is incredibly powerful and something I have seen in action at a school I worked at recently. The teachers raved about it and said their students' writing had thrived as a result. I highly recommend that you take a look at Boomwriter. I've put the link in the description below. Last week, we talked about writing with technology. If you're interested in learning more, especially after the sharing of Boomwriter as my tool of the week, go back and listen to last week's episode. This week, I wanted to focus on creativity in the classroom. Creativity is something close to my heart. I love creating, making, and developing new and unique ideas to help others be successful. My wife and daughters, in particular, are very creative in the form of art, and they're constantly drawing, painting, and developing artworks. My oldest daughter, who's 6.5, found a passion for writing and drawing illustrations through the digital form on our iPad with Apple Pencil. It's been a game changer for her literacy development. Using the app Sketches School, she uses the pencil to create creative artworks in a digital world, and she loves it. Providing opportunities for learners of all ages to be creative is critical. Last week, the World Economic Forum released their latest Future of Jobs report, which is an outlook into the future of what our students need to thrive in their world. My takeaway was that the top 10 skills of 2025, and in particular, the huge emphasis on creativity skills. Not only do we need to integrate creativity into our classrooms and workspaces, but we need to explicitly teach skills related to it. So how do we do it? Well, a great starting point is looking at our curriculum and finding spaces where it works. If you have ideas on how this works, or you wanted to share some of your own, please don't hesitate to share. I look forward to hearing from you soon. Every week, I bring you a short interview with some of my edu heroes, an engaging learning experience with someone who makes a difference in education every day, with a particular focus or angle towards educational technology. This week, I had the pleasure of chatting with Chris Smith and Mark Enser. Let's have a listen to the chats. Today, I have the honor of speaking with Chris Smith. You might know him from Twitter as @SmithRChris. Chris is an EdTech coach at Singapore American School and works with teachers, students, and parents to support the authentic and purposeful integration of technology. Chris is also an Apple Professional Learning Specialist, Apple Distinguished Educator, and a data specialist and guru. Chris, it's a pleasure to have you on the show today. Are you ready to talk about technology integration?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Why don't you start by telling us a little bit about your current role and what inspires you to do what you do?
Sure. So in my current role, I actually wear many hats. I work directly with students in the classroom, delivering lessons on anything from digital citizenship to coding and robotics, and what I like to call creativity, or just making, designing, creating. I also work with teachers on technical tasks like getting their class set up with technology use, app and tech tutorials and walkthroughs, as well as helping them and admin create organizational workflow and systems management tools to make their lives easier. In the past 2 years, I have acquired a new hat related to data analytics and data visualization. Before going into a tech role, when I was in the classroom, often teachers would come to me and ask me to help them with their test scores and how can they organize the information so that they can know what they're looking at with the data that they're collecting. So in our school, I've been recognized as someone that does that, and someone that really enjoys working with data. So they've asked me to hone in on my skills of spreadsheet magic and data literacy and data visualization to help out the school in a wider context. I also love working with teachers and administrators to get this going and to use technology to make their work life easier and more efficient.
It sounds like one heck of a job, Chris. You've got a lot of stuff going on. But when you think about the bigger picture of what's happening around the world today, what is that one thing that excites you about education?
Yeah, you know what? I do a lot of different things, and I'm fascinated by all the stuff I do. I really, really love my job. I love the people that I work with. I love where I'm at. But honestly, one of my favorite things is to go into class and to work with students on creativity. The iPad has to be hands down my favorite tool to use for creating things. We're lucky enough to have a one-to-one iPad program at the school, so all students have the devices with them all the time. If I could choose only one app on my iPad, if I was stuck in a situation where I could only have one app, it would have to be Keynote. Keynote is such a versatile app, and I love teaching kids how to use Keynote. Teachers and kids are kind of scared of it, but there's so much you can do with it. And I love taking complex projects and breaking them down into smaller pieces that students and teachers can both grapple with and then take and create their own stuff with. It's awesome. It's also cool to see the excitement and joy on their face, like the kids' face when they're able to produce something that looks like quality work and they're really proud of it. That's the best part. That's what keeps me going.
And with all of this, what's your best advice for educators in relation to educational technology?
Yeah, I think in my role that I've in the last few years, some of the things that I come across as teachers kind of being intimidated by the technology and maybe feeling that they don't know enough about it to really want to jump in and try to use it. And they feel like they have to master it before they can start using it or start using it with students. And what I try to tell them is just, you don't have to know everything about it, right? You get in, play around with it, and even better, get your kids exposed to the tools, maybe know a few basic things and let them get in and play with it. And you'll be surprised at what they teach you. Now, I've learned so much from my students with regards to apps and creativity and potential. So I just say, don't be afraid to get in and mess up. It'll be totally fine.
I think it's great advice. What about in your day-to-day work, Chris? What's an EdTech tool that you currently love using?
So I work with a lot of different people, and I need to keep myself organized. I take notes in lots of different ways, and I always have my iPad with me. So an app that I use on my iPad is Notability. I find that when I'm doing a lot of consulting and working with teachers, being able to quickly write down a note with the Apple Pencil or draw ideas down and sketch ideas is extremely handy. Also, Notability is really cool in the way that it keeps your documents organized. You have folders you can put them in. You can also bring in PDFs, images, web clips, and you can just annotate directly on them. And then you can cut and paste, move things around. So it's just my go-to app for staying organized with all the different projects I do.
And you're a data specialist and often share your work with data online. Why do you love data? How's it useful? And how do you help teachers and schools with your expertise?
Right. So I often hear from teachers, this is the biggest question that I've heard in the past is, why are we collecting this data? Why do I have to put this into a spreadsheet? What we've done a very good job in education at collecting data. We do a great job at collecting it. I don't know if we necessarily do the best job at using the data to inform instruction. We know that they rely heavily on data to make decisions about how things are going, what they should do, how they should check, how they can check in to see what's working and what's not. Getting them to being able to interpret that data is another thing. And so I really love working with teachers, working with organizations to show them how they can take the data and turn it into information that can help them make decisions. When I'm working with administrators and teachers, I work with them to try to help them figure out what do they want to know, and then show them how they can organize the data, collect it correctly in order to make their work more efficient and to make smart decisions. One example of this that I've been recently working on was we've been building out these things called digital placement cards. So in our elementary school, we have over 1,800 students in just our elementary school alone. New teachers are given a printed out one-page document with some demographic and academic information about the students from the previous teacher. These are things like, kind of where were they in general with academic levels? Did they receive any learning support? Are they a speech student? Are they an ELL? Those types of things, so that the teacher can get a quick snapshot of a student. However, these placement cards don't really reflect all of the data that we collect. And so I wanted to be able to create a system that helps teachers and administrators really understand the whole child and in turn the makeup of their whole classroom and make it in a way that's kind of easy and quick to see. So I did some work over the summer. I ran a test pilot with some documents that I was given. And over the course of a few weeks, I got some feedback and input from school psychologists, counselors, and teachers. And then I went ahead and did a presentation to the elementary administration about this possibility. And they loved it so much that they wanted to make sure it was rolled out this year. So I had my hands full right from the beginning. But I find that when, most people are unaware of the possibilities of data visualization until they actually see it for themselves. And this is why we collect data, right? It's to help us make informed decisions. So that's kind of what I've been really passionate about recently. And I guess that's maybe why I'm considered a bit of a data guru.
Yeah, totally. And your passion telling us about that, Chris, is just amazing. And I get excited when I see you post things online and on Twitter just about what you're doing and what you're working on. I'm sure the teachers and administration at your school absolutely love you being a part of it. When you think about learning, as an educator, and both of us based here in Singapore, we rely really heavily on being online and being connected to people all over the world to help with that learning journey. And finally, Chris, what's the best way for listeners today to follow and connect with you? Because I'm sure there's so many things that you've shared that they really want to follow up on and learn a little bit more about.
Sure. Twitter is probably the easiest way to find me. So my handle is @SmithRChris, all connected together there. Send me a chat on that, or you send me a direct message, and I usually get back to people fairly quickly. You can also see some of the projects I'm working on at my website. It's smithvisualizations with a Z.com. And if you're looking at something specifically related to data information, that can be found on a blog that I do with another data specialist, Jordan Benedict. We have a website called visualizeyourlearning.com. And Jordan is a data coach up at Shanghai American School. And so we often work together on data projects. And so that's a great place to get some ideas if you're trying to figure out how to incorporate data or to use data more effectively in your school.
And all of these links are in the podcast notes below. Chris, thank you so much for your time today.
Yes, thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Today, I have the honor of speaking with Mark Enser. You might know him as @EnserMark on Twitter, with almost 20,000 followers. Mark is head of geography and is based in the UK. Mark is a published author and is constantly inspiring educators, particularly geography teachers globally. Mark, it's an incredible pleasure to have you on the show today. Are you ready to talk education and technology integration?
I'm always willing to talk about education.
Let's go. Why don't you start by describing your current role and what inspires you to do what you do?
My role is head of geography, and I'm also the school's research lead. So I take some responsibility for having a look at what educational research is out there, recontextualising it for teachers, answering questions that teachers might have in the school about projects that they're working on and ways that we could approach things. I think what inspires me is kind of the intellectual challenge of it all, of finding different ways of doing things or seeing what might work better, be more effective, more efficient, make things easier for people, and just what's going to inspire that love of learning in my pupils, in my own subject, in geography, the things that are going to give them access to the subject.
Yeah, that's great. I love that you have the opportunity to be able to do that as well, and that in your role, you can continue to remain inspired. And I think a lot of people listening today often wonder, am I in the right place? Am I doing what really I love to do, or do I need to change and do I need to adapt? So I'm pleased to hear that you're really loving what you're doing and thinking about the bigger picture of globally education today. What excites you about that?
What I really like at the moment, I think we're at a bit of a position of change in education. I think we've had years which is kind of fetishized activity in education, of keeping children busy. And that's been our role, is just to kind of fill them with activities, to distract them from the learning, and just kind of keep them entertained in the classroom. I think what we're seeing is a real move towards letting our subjects shine. And we're kind of recapturing this belief that our subjects matter. I think that's been the big move that I'm certainly seeing in the UK, and I'm hearing from other parts of the world as well. It is this move towards what Michael Young calls this future 3 approach to education, of bringing the discipline back in to what we're doing.
Yeah, I love that. That's really cool. And what about specifically around educational technology? We've got a lot of listeners here today that are really just craving advice, craving information to do with how to make the most of using technology authentically and purposefully in their classroom. What's your best advice for them?
Well, I think that's really kind of linked to what I was saying about us moving away from just kind of activity. And I think that's the role that I'm seeing more and more for educational technology. It's allowing us to teach in very effective and efficient ways, better, more effectively, more efficiently. I remember a few years ago, a lot of excitement about things like VR goggles in geography. We could do all these virtual field trips and things like that. And that's what EdTech meant. It meant buying these new bits of hardware, and it was going to have this transformative effect on the very nature of teaching itself. We're all going to be teaching completely differently, and then we're going to break out of subject groups, and we're going to have a lot of individualized, personalized learning. And I think over the last 5 years or so, we've seen a kind of stepping back from that, and a realization that actually we can just be using educational technology to support good, simple, traditional, effective teaching. So the use of things like visualizers in the classroom for effective modeling, using things like virtual learning environments for uploading resources, for allowing pupils to submit work electronically that then makes marking and feedback more efficient and effective, the ability to review work more quickly than you might be able to otherwise. So I think when I think about authentic use of educational technology, that's what it means to me. It's not using it for the sake of it. It's not using it because it's shiny and new and because it drives some other kind of agenda in education. It's using it as a professional to support what we know works.
Yeah, and I think playing with that theme of authenticity and professional learning, I guess, is sort of your use of social media and professional learning networks. And that's where we've connected and engaged on Twitter. Tell me and tell our listeners a little bit about your choice of PLNs. Where do you engage and who should we be connecting with?
For me, I think the most, I'm on Twitter a lot, and I'm not sure it's used the most healthy and professional way. There's a lot of just, nice socializing and chatting and things like that. But in terms of effective personalized learning network, I think it's in the subject communities. The geography teacher community on Twitter is brilliant at creating resources, sharing them, collaborating, but also being able to challenge each other and say, no, I'm not sure about, I would do that. I would probably change that idea and tweak it slightly, or why are we still using this method of teaching? Can we discuss that? Can we talk about it in a constructive and professional way, rather than immediately throwing our hands up in panic that somebody has challenged something that we're doing? So I certainly see the subject communities as being very, very powerful through social media.
Yeah, I'm pleased you pointed that out, because I think a lot of people get scared away from using social media because they see non-educators using it in a very different way. And my experience with Twitter and other social medias when it comes to educators is that it's been the best place for me. It's been the place where I have learned the most. It's where I go to for advice. It's where I go to connect and engage. I learn more there than I learn anywhere else. And the people that are there are super supportive, but most importantly, they push and they challenge in a positive way. And I think that's what you've identified as well. So thinking about sort of EdTech now and what you use in your day-to-day life as a classroom, as a teacher, but also in administration and doing what you do day-to-day, what are one or two EdTech tools that you love using?
My visualizer, first of all. It's, I'm fairly new to it, but it immediately transformed what I was able to do. So just the ability to walk around a classroom, look at pupils' work, see something that was really good, and immediately be able to share it with the whole class. Just, take it over, put it up on the board and discuss it. Or whilst pupils are working on something, suddenly realise actually what I need for my next task is a really good model answer to show and unpick with them. And to have that ability just to really quickly write something out that I'm then able to share with the rest of the class before they move on to critique their own work. Just little things like that. It just opens up what you can do much more. I'm thinking in the future I'll be able to use it as well for showing artifacts and things, whether that's, things like maps, topographical maps, things like that. Again, just better throw it under there and immediately put it up onto the board. I think it's going to be really useful. I also, we use Firefly as our VLE in school, which I'm finding very useful at the moment because we're obviously in lockdown. And so doing a lot of remote learning. And that's been very, very useful to be able to upload resources, digital textbooks, but also be able to collect in work from pupils, give them very quick feedback on how they're doing. And just to be able to share resources has been very, very useful.
And I think you've touched on this as well, and how important having that professional learning network is for your continuous learning. The listeners out there are also looking for resources that they can go to help connect and learn and engage. Can you recommend one book or a resource that you've been reading lately or investigating lately, or just one of your all-time favorites, and tell us why we should be exploring it?
If I could recommend just one at the moment, outside of kind of subject ones, I suppose, probably Michael Young and David Lambert's Knowledge in the Future School, which takes you through this story of viewing curriculum through three different stages. That idea of Future One, this very traditional didactic view of knowledge where it was just about transmission of absolute truths, and then passing into Future Two, which is looking at knowledge as something which is always relative, constructed by the individual, nothing that's absolute, and therefore a real fear of passing on knowledge. And then proposing a view of curriculum that involves knowledge in Future Three, which is saying this kind of social realist approach where knowledge is external to you. There are things that are true and that can be passed on to the next generation, but that truth can always be created within subject disciplines, but can also be contested within them. Just a really kind of exciting book about where we can take education and curriculum. So yeah, I think Michael Young, Knowledge in the Future School would be my top pick.
You obviously love reading and engaging in books, but you're also extremely talented because you've written your own book. Tell us a little bit about that and what inspired you to write it.
I've written two. At the moment, I've got Making Every Geography Lesson Count, which is the geography edition of the Making Every Lesson Count franchise that was started by Sean Allison and Andy Tharby. And it was looking at their 6 principles of effective teaching and then looking at how it could translate to geography lessons in particular, which I loved writing. And then I wrote Teach Like Nobody's Watching, which is looking at how we can simplify teaching. I think that teaching is fundamentally simple. You see anyone teach anything, and it's just about recapping what you think they already know. Teachers tend to start with last lesson as their kind of entry into a lesson. It's like once upon a time. So you see a bit of recap. There's always a bit of input, some application, a bit of feedback. And when anyone teaches anything, that's all you really see. But we've just massively overcomplicated teaching through a desire to please outside observers and inspectors and all these kind of various things that detract us from the actual job of teaching. So the book's really an exploration of how we take our profession back to basics and strip out the fear, which is why I call it kind of teach like nobody's watching. How would you teach if it was just left to you in the classroom to get on and do it? And it's exploring what teachers might do.
I love that. I'm definitely going to go away and take a look at it myself. I'll make sure we put the link out there for everyone to see as well. Mark, you've shared so much inspiration here today that I'm sure our listeners are going to want to follow and connect with you, and also see your book and learn a little bit more about how to do what you do. What's the best way for the listeners to follow and connect with you?
Oh, definitely Twitter. You can't miss me on there. So I'm at Ensermark, Enser. So at Ensermark. And you'll find me within seconds.
Mark, thank you so much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Craig. It's been lovely.
Next week, join me for episode 28 of the EdTech Chat Podcast, when I'm joined by the incredible Sylvia Duckworth. One of the things I love doing is giving away prizes as a thank you for tuning in, listening, and hopefully subscribing to the EdTech Chat Podcast. Last week, I gave away David Lee's book. To win, you needed to complete the form at bit.ly/edtechwin. The winner has already been contacted directly by me, and it is Priya Rajagopalan. Congratulations, Priya. This week, I'm giving away a book out of my own personal collection. I've got hundreds of them, and I want you to have the opportunity to win one for yourself. You can pick any one you want, but to win, you need to complete the form at bit.ly/edtechwin. It'll take you less than a minute to do. The link is in the description below, and competition closes on Wednesday the 11th of November, and the winner will be contacted directly by me and announced on next Friday's podcast episode. Good luck. If you enjoyed today's episode, smash that subscribe button and share it with your colleagues, friends, and families. I really do appreciate your support. Please remember to take 2 minutes as well to rate the podcast so we can reach even more educators and EdTech enthusiasts globally. Please share your favourite parts of today's episode by tagging me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. And don't hesitate to ask me questions that I can answer in an upcoming episode. Remember, you have the chance to win as well, so check out the links in the description for more. I'll see you again next week.
Thank you for listening to the EdTech Chat Podcast, creating a community for educators to learn, share, and grow. If you liked today's episode, please don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss another episode, and be in the drawing to win prizes every week. If you know others that would enjoy the show, please hit that share button and brighten their day. Join us again next week for your weekly EdTech hit with @Mr. Kemp NZ. We'll see you again soon.